All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. This is Web Wednesday, the show where I bring on some amazing people to chat about various web dev topics. And today I'm beyond thrilled to bring on Maria Naggaga. She's actually been like one of my heroes, one of my favorites to watch present. Seen the work that she's done, and so I'm just thrilled to have her on as a guest. And today we're going to be talking about minimal APIs, which is a new feature that's coming out in ASP.NET 6 that will allow you to start to create web APIs and other things, as Maria will tell you, with far less code than is traditionally required with ASP.NET. But enough about me. Let's get Maria in here. So Maria, thanks for joining. So excited that you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Christopher. And I've been a fan of yours as well. Like I remember seeing a getting started MVA that you did with one of my best friends, Gabby,
Uh-huh. Yep.
on TypeScript, and I'm just like, wow. So I'm just really excited to be here because I just love the way you make the web, which is slightly complex, but also a great place for people to get started, more approachable, especially for newbies.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You do that with like C sharp and basically anything else that you do. You have such a fantastic style. I love it. Absolutely love it. So
Thank
yeah.
you.
And Gabby is also spectacular. We're actually going to have
Oh
her
yeah.
back on in a couple of weeks. But yeah,
Oh,
she's
that's
wonderful.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is great. Like she works on TypeScript tooling for Visual Studio and she's doing an amazing job. And I can't wait for her to show everyone like what she's been working on, like simplifying and improving the tooling process. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm really excited for it. So I always like to start with this question, which
Mhm.
is how did you get to be where you are? How did you get to become Maria Nagaga?
Yeah, great question. Like I wasn't a person who thought I would ever be in a tech field. It wasn't something I even knew was a career growing up because I'm from Uganda and growing up being a successful person in a professional environment was being a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. So I spent my entire life actually thinking that I was going to be a lawyer to please my parents, but I really wanted to be a script writer my entire life, but that didn't happen. And I remember when I was getting ready to go to college, I ended up doing a history degree first. Like my first degree was in history. And then when I graduated from my history degree, I realized that I was not really employable. Specifically, I wasn't really employable in my home country. So I decided to ramp up my skills. And I was trying to figure out what am I going to do that's differently. And I had no idea whatsoever. So I remember I was sitting in an internet cafe. Like this is going to make me sound so old. I was sitting in an internet cafe and I was looking at the Destiny Child website and I accidentally right clicked on something and I saw view source and I just saw all this gibberish code pop up. So what I did was I had a flash drive. I saved it, and then when I went home and worked on my computer, it opened it up in Notepad. I looked at this thing. I started editing the code, and I realized I was building a website without building a website. So I was writing code without knowing I was writing code. And this was HTML. And when my mom saw me do this, she was just like, okay, I know what you're going to do. And she enrolled me in a diploma in software engineering back home. And it was like a 9 months diploma. And when I did that, I actually went back to university in Canada. I went to Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia, Canada, and I did a computer science degree. And that was really my entryway into tech. Like I just stumbled across it. And one of the big things that I've always aspired to do is how do we create our platform, our languages, our frameworks, our APIs, our tooling to feel more approachable to everyone, like how I just stumbled into tech. How do we make sure that there are so many other Marias who stumble into tech as well and feel successful?
I love all of that. I think of all the origin stories that I've heard, that's probably my favorite. That you were sitting in an internet cafe, accidentally right click view source on a pop band's website, and went, oh, this looks interesting. Let me grab that, and then fast forward a handful of years, and here you are. That's remarkable. I love every last bit of that. I love every last bit of that. And I also love that you wanted to be a screenwriter. Did you actually like start to down that path? Did you get in and start to pursue that?
Yeah, I wrote a lot of fan fiction, like a lot of fan fiction. And then I also used to try to rewrite a lot of stories of like authors I loved and tell them from the perspective of a girl like me, or like someone living in East Africa. So I remember trying to rewrite my favorite book of all times, which is Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. I do not like, no matter how many times I read that book, I smile in all the right places and I get really mad in all the right places. Like, I can't believe Mr. Darcy said that. So I actually remember rewriting Pride and Prejudice, like a mini screenplay that my parents had to sit down and watch, and my sisters had to reenact, because like I am I come from a family of 6 kids. We are 5 girls, 1 boy. I'm the youngest girl. So my older sisters had to reenact the whole play. So thank you for doing that, my older sisters.
That's spectacular. Have you been introduced yet to Chloe Condon?
No, I have not, but I have seen her on Twitter, and we have talked on Twitter, but I have not been formally introduced to her. No.
Okay, we're gonna need to fix this. We're gonna need to make sure that you and Chloe get together. So because Chloe came up as a theater person, so like just that
Oh.
that background that you have of just like wanting to perform, the two of you are gonna get along famously.
Well, yeah, like I don't think I'm that talented, but I'm trying.
That's all right. It's the trying. That's the important part. That's the important part. That is so cool. I love every bit of that. I love every bit of that.
Thanks.
So now you find yourself doing ASP.NET,
Yeah.
and you find yourself doing minimal APIs. So let me start with kind of the what question do I want to start with? I want to start with kind of a real basic question, which is what is a minimal API? Why is it important to ASP.NET?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And like I have a presentation that will tell you the story of like how we landed on minimal API. So I don't know if my screen can be seen at the time, but I
Whoops.
also wanted to give you oops.
There we go.
I
Now
have
it
to give
can. As soon as
perfect.
if I hit the right button, it can.
Okay. I had to kind of give people a context of where I sit in the .NET team and where I kind of shine in quotes. So I've been at Microsoft, I can't believe it now, for 8 years. It has been 8 years. Right out of college, I joined Microsoft. For my first 3 years, no, actually 4 years, I was a developer advocate based in New York. And I really focused on startups and students and how to get them really excited about building on our stack, and was predominantly Azure more than anything else. And I remember around the time ASP.NET Core was being open sourced and cross platform and becoming something that people could use outside of Windows. So I started to begin to explore it more and saying, okay, if we can use ASP.NET Core outside of Windows, that means that we can actually reach a bunch of people. And I did this presentation at I can't remember, at OSCON on how to teach ASP.NET and how to teach .NET as a whole, and all the challenges that people faced when doing .NET, and the things that we needed to change within the ecosystem to make it more approachable and more relatable for everybody. And at that time, Scott Hunter, who is like the main PM owner for everything that is .NET, had heard of me. And he recruited me onto the ASP.NET team, specifically the .NET team. And when I asked him, what am I going to do here? What feature am I going to own? He said, you're not really going to own a feature, but what you are going to own is how do we make .NET more approachable, more interesting, more appealing to people who are non-.NET consumers. And the first thing I did for that was I wanted to tackle the way people learned how to write C sharp, the way they learned how to build .NET applications. And at the time when I joined the team back in 2016, the only real way to build a .NET application according to our documentations was on Windows using Visual Studio, and you're done. And this was a huge blocker because if I'm on a Mac, right, or if I don't have Visual Studio, I'm stuck. So I wanted us to rethink that entire process. And I, along with my amazing engineering team, Diego, John, Brett, Peter, who left, he's at another company now, started something called Try.net, right? And Try.net was a way for people to run C sharp code in the browser. And it was incredibly popular. Like we saw more new people come onto our docs, use it, go through these tutorials. It was really successful. And people was like, how can we take this a step farther? And our team was beginning to invest in data science and ML workloads. And we were the natural team to think about notebooks and interactive notebooks and the way people could write C sharp code in like in a notebook, like the same way they do it with Jupyter today. And that was incredibly successful with education. Now, the next big thing I was given was here's ASP.NET. You kind of figured out the language, right? And like with the working through Mads Torgensen, I was able to like open his mind up to like thinking about how do we make C sharp easier for people to learn. And that's where things like top level statements came in, which is why I can just write console.writeline and it will work, right? And that's what we wanted. Like gone is a ceremony, focus on the task at hand. So that's a bit of the context for me to set the scene as to why I was brought onto minimal APIs. So back to the presentation, the way to think about minimal APIs, especially in .NET, is APIs without controllers. In .NET today, especially with APIs, what you'll have is your code will be very structured. You'll have your program.cs where you can like program.cs, your startup.cs, your models, and this is all to do a single route, right? You're just trying to call an endpoint and you have all these different files in all these different places. So how could we make this easier? So what we did, before I jump into what we did, I want to set the story of why we did it, because I had been singing that ASP.NET was hard to learn for a while. So this all started with this tweet. So this was in 2019. And that's funny. That's like around my birthday, that date. This is in 2019, where someone created a sample app on how to build a calculator. And they built it using different languages. So they had Python, they had Node, they had Go, and they had .NET. And then someone in the .NET community said, well, this does a really bad job of showing off C sharp. The example has 20 files where the others have 2 to 5. And the truth of the matter is it was completely and utterly true. When we looked around the room, we were a lot harder. So let's go through this. This is a calculator application running in a Docker container that is in Go, a single file, an app.go file. In Python, an app.py. In Node, it gets a little bit more complicated, but you still have a few files, but it's really the app.js plus the package dependencies. Okay, this is C sharp. This is .NET. You have a program.cs, a startup.cs, you have your properties, you have your models, you have your controllers. This is to build a calculator app.
That's not good.
No, it's not good, right? So if I was coming and I was picking like, what platform should I go build my next application on? I don't know if we'd be the first person on your list. So how do we become the first person you want to think about? And the fact of the matter is that when you look at .NET, it just feels so much more complex when we do it. But it isn't really complexity, it's about ceremony. Because if you think about .NET applications and our history and where we came from, it's we were built for enterprise. We were built for large scale applications. We were built before people were actually building applications every day. We were built before the time where everybody was learning to code and was really just something that was in house, right? In a company. But the world has changed, and we have startups and we have individual developers. We have people building their own small businesses. We have people using code in all these different ways, and we need to be there for them. So when David Fowler, who I work with on this, and I had a list of people who we work with. We have an entire crew, myself, David Fowler, Stephen Halter, Damian Edwards, Brady Gaster. Like, we have people who are like, I'm new to .NET. Like, I still feel like I'm very new to ASP.NET because I do not have the 20 years of history. And then we also have people who have been building this from the beginning. And because of that match, we're able to actually build a holistic story. So when David saw that tweet, he said, challenge accepted, and he came up with the first prototype of minimal APIs called Feather HTTP. And this is David's first commit. And you can see like he really streamed down everything to just be a program.cs file. And that was it. And you still had all that stuff. So when David did that, the first thing he did was, this is actually, I pulled this directly out of the message that David and I had. He asked me, Maria, did you see the Twitter? Did you see the Twitter conversation? And I was like, yeah, it was spicy. I think people are saying that .NET is hard. And I was like, I have been telling you all of this for ages. And that like was literally what I sent him. I've been telling you this for ages. And he said, do you want to change it? I was like, absolutely. So we worked with Charles, who was a user experience researcher on our team, to kind of figure out what did we need to build.
I do want to highlight real quick here that these
Yeah.
are the types of things, for like anybody that's watching, that these are the types of things that actually do happen inside of Microsoft, that we do listen. And so every now and then, like, something will spark something, somebody will then start a conversation, and then voila, now you have Maria Naggaga leading a charge to simplify ASP.NET.
Oh yeah, we definitely listen. I'm glad you brought that up because everything, even about the user experience, before we actually commit to a product, we do go out and talk to the customers that we want to build things for, the customers that we want to support so they can go on to their next thing. And we also come up with a bunch of core goals and principles of what we want to go out and get. So when we thought about the goals for minimal APIs, the first thing that we wanted to do was to reduce complexity for new people. And by new people, we not only mean the new people who are learning how to code and building their first application, we also mean the new people who are coming from other platforms. So if somebody is in Node or Go, why would .NET be an option for you? We wanted to reduce ceremony for all our developers. So sometimes, as I explained, for the calculator app, for example, even if you are a .NET developer today who has been working on this for a couple of years, I don't know if you want to like go through that level of ceremony in order just to build a calculator application or to build a simple API that, let's say, calls the weather. And the other thing that we wanted to do was embrace minimalism as a mantra, like as something that drove the way we built our things, not focus on complexity for complexity's sake, but to think about, is this code actually usable? Is it readable? And we really took the lessons that I had learned in building Try.net and .NET Interactive, where we focused on the body of the class rather than the whole makeup of the class. Like, we don't worry about your namespaces or what NuGet packages that you wanted to focus on. We're focusing on, can you understand the syntax so you know how to write the code? And we also wanted to optimize for growth. So for example, if you are starting with minimal APIs and you happened to scale to thousands or hundreds or tens of APIs that were getting more complex, we wanted to make sure that we were providing a happy path to get you to a more structured, more controller-based way of building applications. And we're also at the benefit where we dealt with complexity first. So we have the advantage, and we can actually take the time right now to focus on getting started and helping you grow, like would actually be there for you. Oh, any questions on the goals?
Not at the moment. All of that looks good. So it does sound to me then that, if I'm looking for something like I just need to prototype something, if I just need to like start writing code and just get some stuff up, that this will help me. But then if we do hit a point where now having controllers and having all of that is going to be the way that we want to structure, that we can, kind of seamlessly then start moving in that direction.
Absolutely. So
Cool.
just for heads up, I should have said we will grow with you. Everything that I'm showing you right now, that I'll show you in the demos, we're not there yet, but we will get there.
Okay.
Okay, so the first thing, as I said, we wanted to focus on talking to people outside our comfort zone. So I forced, David Fowler. I said, you need to talk to people who are not .NET devs. You need to feel the pain. You need to hear their frustrations. You need to listen to them because we have so many different paths in which we get to talk to our wonderful .NET community all the time. We don't really take enough time to talk to the people who we want to get or the people we want to support. So we set up a user study where we had different formats. The first thing was we interviewed about 16 non-.NET developers, and the format was to ask them for .NET perception before, and then we had them do a tutorial where they used Feather HTTP, and then we asked them for their .NET perceptions afterwards. Now, before, these are some of the quotes. When I think about .NET, I think about the early 2000s. That was like something that came up a lot. Another one is I don't have a great perception of .NET. It's mostly enterprise, and I try to stay away from that. And the other one was someone who's in a startup, and she's like, I work in a startup. .NET isn't widely adopted. So what we had them do was build the back end for a to-do app written in React.js using minimal API, Feather HTTP. Now, this was the reaction immediately after. It's totally different. I feel like the C# syntax is similar to JavaScript, so it feels like home. To the person who's like, I stay away from it. Enterprise was like, maybe I had an unfair perception of .NET. And then the person who was a Go developer said, it's not as difficult as I thought. And that's the kind of thing that we wanted to hear. We wanted to change people's perception of .NET. And if we made these changes to make .NET APIs a little bit easier to build, would people respond well to it? Okay. Any questions?
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I would also kind of add my story as well here, because prior to joining Microsoft, I was a dyed-in-the-wool ASP.NET, MVC, web forms, SharePoint developer, and then after joining Microsoft, I then found myself doing an awful lot of like JavaScript and Python and Node and so forth. And if I'm being honest here, the couple of times that I have come back to write some ASP.NET code, I've definitely felt a lot of what's been expressed here. That like doing some of these things in Node and Python feels a bit more natural than it does in present, maybe soon to be past versions of ASP.NET.
Yeah, and I hope when you see the starter template code, you'll give us another try, Christopher.
I promise.
Okay, so let's jump right into code. I think that's a yeah. So this was literally, please, I promised David I would show this because he loves Jay-Z. I was like, allow me to reintroduce myself, a quote from Jay-Z's one of famous songs. So I want to reintroduce minimal APIs. So what I'm going to go over here, let me like this. Oh, spoilers. Okay, still more spoilers. Okay, teams. Okay, let's do that. I should have, yeah, got it. Okay, so I'm going to start over Visual Studio. So in order to get started with minimal APIs today, all you need is the latest version of the .NET Core .NET 6 previews, and you'll get the minimal API experience. I'm using Visual Studio 2022 because I love to test the stuff that we're building. But the same thing that we're doing today, you can do it in the .NET CLI. So if you're in VS Code, do not worry, we have support for you. So start up Visual Studio. Okay. This always happens. Like I've had this experience happen many times where when I start up, like, look at that. Like, you see that I said it's such a beautiful Visual Studio. Like, the person who predominantly uses code, for the first time, I'm using Visual Studio more because like it just looks nicer.
I can get behind
So let's do that. Yeah, you're behind that? Yeah. So let's create a new project. And what I'm going to select is the ASP.NET Core Web Empty template. This happens every single time I'm sharing my screen. I think, people can tweet my boss and say, get Maria a new computer, it's time. Okay, so I'm going to click on empty. And like in the future, we'll actually have a minimal API template. We're still discussing what the name will be. But right now, as we're prototyping and trying to make that we are fitting almost every user scenario that people would expect from minimal APIs, that we'd be able to, wanted to test it out on a template that people weren't going to, get mad if we were testing it out on this template. So I'll hit next, and
I appreciate that you're up to web application 16. That's real world there.
Well, like, that's because I deleted a whole bunch of stuff. Like the last time I did this, I was on web application 164. I was like, this looks bad. So I'm just going to create that and do this.
We're all there.
And prepared to be amazed in a little bit. I think, okay, Visual Studio not respond. It will respond. Yeah, while it's doing that, what I want to show today is how we're going to build a very simple API, right? And point to an endpoint in less than 5 lines of code.
Okay. Less than 5 lines of code.
And if you, less than 5 lines of code. And if anyone goes to my Twitter, like goes onto my Twitter page, and it's one of the pinned tweets, I have how we built a simple web application in 3 lines of code. Okay. It's almost there. That was interesting. Okay. So it's doing something. It's thinking. It's having a good time. Yeah, I actually do need a new computer. I've had this one for whenever this book came out. That's when I've had it. So,
oh gosh, yeah.
I think I know it's pretty bad. I think I can graduate to something else. Let me try quitting Teams and see. I should have quit this early and see if that helps.
Performance is inversely proportional to the number of people watching. So that's always what happens. It's also like typing skill.
Yeah. So if people are new to ASP.NET, this is going to look great. If you're an existing ASP.NET developer, one of the things that you might have noticed that over here in the corner, you'd be like, where's my startup.cs?
Yeah.
Now, in the new minimal API experience, startup.cs is optional. What we've done is that we've taken the best bits of startup and we've put it into program.cs.
Okay.
So if you want to structure your code that way, you can. So, all right. Sorry, Chris, did I lose you? Christopher, Did I lose you?
I'm still here.
Okay. Okay, so let's open this up. So here you have a couple of lines of code. I am going to show you a new feature in Visual Studio in C# that is going to be coming out in next preview, so preview 7. But I'm going to show you, we have this concept of a global using. So I can I'm always doing this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna add a new item. I always pick existing instead of
Oh,
new
yeah.
because of the name tab. And then I'm gonna give it a name once it pops up. And like people were like, "You're cheating." I was like, "Don't worry. In the next version of .NET, this will be in by default. So I'm going to create an import.cs. I'm going to
Oh.
add that. And you can call this file whatever you want. I just call it import as just a way to say I'm importing it from, this is going to be importing to the rest of my application. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to take all these usings that I have over here. And I'm going to plug them in here. And I'm going to just put the prefix global.
And is that going to be supported for Visual Studio Code projects as well, or is that particular to Visual Studio?
It's particular to Visual Studio.
Okay.
So in what will happen in VS is that you'll get a bunch VS Code, you get a bunch of warnings. But if you go like .NET New, like, and you run in the command line, your application will run.
Oh, okay.
It'll just be like it will be an annoying user experience. So you're just like, why are these red squigglies? And you can see all the red squigglies are gone, right?
Mhm.
So I don't really need a developer exception page for this. I'm going to delete that line. Okay.
Mhm.
And I'm going to run this application. Right. There we go. Fifth time's a charm. And it popped up. Okay. So it's doing something. You can see happening over here. But I said in less than 5 lines. So excluding the spaces, in less than excluding the spaces, in less than 5 lines, I've actually built a simple web application that is going to return hello world. And it is popping up somewhere here. I see the magic. It's happening. Just so you know, I didn't make like, this isn't one I made earlier. This is actually like a real thing that is taking its time because my computer is having a moment. But like as that's doing its thing, do you have any questions so far?
No, well, one thing I want to point out is I love the fact that it's all now procedural code because
Yeah.
whenever I think about C Sharp, I'm always still to this day thinking class program static void
Mm-hmm.
main. Like to my
Yep.
brain, that's how I start every single C Sharp application that I ever wind up creating, or
Yep.
something similar that I need to create classes, and you don't have any classes there. Like it's all procedural code. So just like
Yep.
seeing that is sort of mind blowing to me.
Well, do you want to see something a little bit more mind blowing? Like when I've showed this, people are like, "What?" And I'm just expecting this to happen because that was a sweet thing. I'm just expecting it to happen because I came from the Python world. Like that was like the first language I ever loved,
Yeah.
right? Was Python. So let's say I wanted to define a new route, a new endpoint. I'm just going to copy and paste because I'm an incredibly slow typer, especially when I'm under pressure. And I'm going to say, hello. And it's going to say new endpoint. Save that. I'm going to go over here and just slash hello.
Chugga chugga chugga. There we go. Okay.
There you go, right?
Yeah.
See how easy it was to define a route?
That's awesome. And it feels so natural to me, like as a Flask developer or as a Node developer, like that behaves like I would expect it to behave.
Exactly. Right. And yeah, it just you can imagine the way I've been doing it, because I'm also relatively new to ASP.NET, which kind of surprises people because people are like, but you've been working in .NET, but I've been working in interactive and C#. I haven't really thought about the web for a while. So when I'm writing like web code, I'm thinking of JavaScript and I'm thinking of fast and I'm thinking of like that's what I'm thinking about. So when I was writing down tutorials that for this new experience that is coming out, was I looked at the fast tutorial and I was like, how can we make code just that fluent to write?
Right.
And that was a big thing for me. So even just stepping back, I wanted to show people a real world example of this. So I'm going to show you a piece of code that we did for build. And I'm not going to run this application. But what I want to do is kind of show you an app built a couple of different ways. So I'm going to close this. Yeah, it's running some very old bits. And I was just like, I said, oh, I should show this. And then it was just about the time to join the call. And I was like, yeah, I'll just show you the context of the code. So I want to this is a more interesting part. And I don't know how easily you can see this.
Yeah. That side, I can see it all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Here I can
let's,
hold on one second. I can make it a little bit bigger if I like do a couple of
let me see
things. Yeah.
isn't there a way to do this in Visual Studio? Is it bigger your side?
It's a little bit bigger. I'm trying to remember. It's been such a long time since I've done Visual Studio. Do a
No.
search for like
Let me try.
Zoom.
No, I think it's under. Yep, that does not happen. Font. Like I just want like okay. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I just remembered, Maria, your computer's slow. Like loading anything is going to take a while. Especially, but what I wanted to emphasize here is that this is something we showed at Build
Okay.
to show how far we've come. So we built a web API, a weather API in a couple of different ways. We used Node, so we built an Express API. We built a web API with controllers. Let me see. Let me see if I can. Things like now, I'll just be like, where does this go? And I'm just like, yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to remember where this is without a Google search, but I'll try my best to explain what's happening here.
Yeah.
So what we have here is let's look at the web API, right? So the web API, we have a controller, we have a program.cs, we have a startup.cs, we have a weather model. We have all those different files with all those different structures that we need to work with. Let's go ahead and look at Node. When it comes to Node, there you have an app.cs, and that is it.
Or app. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, app.ts.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm so used to saying CS. So you have an app.ts. Now, when you come over to the weather and minimal APIs, you have a program.cs and you have a model, and that's it. But the logic of your application is all in your program.cs. And because of the way we've built minimal APIs right now, your model doesn't even have to exist here. It could easily exist within your program.cs. And I'll show an example of that. So this is an application that I've been working on. I tried to get it completely ready for today, but is this it? Yes, this is it. And let me just close all the like CS pods and this and things and the results. Okay. My entire application, so this is a to-do app, exists in this single file. It exists in my program.cs. In my program.cs, you'll see I've configured my endpoints. I've configured my in-memory database over here. I have hooked up Swagger UI, and I've defined my map get, my map post, and my map delete. So I'm going to run this application. This is a thing that's coming up with minimal APIs. Our next release is that we will have Swagger UI support, which I'm really excited about. Are people familiar with Swagger? You must be.
I am,
course.
but why don't you go ahead and define Swagger?
So Swagger is a UI that allows us to play around with our API. So typically, if I wanted to play around with my API, I would probably have to configure some sort of front end. Like I'd have to build a UI to build it. But Swagger allows us to test our APIs without having to do that. So let me make sure this is the right one that's running. Are you running the right application? Nope, it's running the wrong one. So this happens in VS sometimes. If I don't close this window, my terminal, it doesn't close itself.
Yep.
And if I run another application, it won't work. That catches me every single time. See?
I feel that pain.
Yeah, I actually put in a request for a change for that. That I think, like, we should be able to close that on its own. Okay, so here is the app. If I do /Swagger, I get my Swagger UI. Okay, I broke something. Yay. Okay. Let us see.
Do you have to generate the Swagger JSON file, or will it generate that for you?
It will generate it for you.
Okay.
Okay. So what am I missing? I'm just reading the term to see what I have broken. If not, I have a backup application. I have a backup. Okay. Let's pull out my backup. Well, the error was just too, like, another thing that we're working on is more meaningful errors because they don't really make sense at the moment. So let me run that.
So while that's coming up, let me ask you a real quick question. Irvin asks, using the example shown, so using minimal API, how would you add in authentication? Is it an attribute declaration? Is it a parameter that you pass in?
Authorization is a little bit messy at the moment.
Okay.
It is it's an attribute declaration, but we're trying to make it better. That is still a loophole that we like. That is a scenario we have not fixed yet.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But it is something that you're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm. It is something we absolutely will be doing.
Okay.
Yeah. It's actually on my list of things. Like I actually have a list of things that I have to figure out before we release minimal APIs. And an easy way to do authentication is right up there. Okay, this app is running. Let's just right here. So localhost / docs. I think that's what I call it.
Chugga.
Well, at least while it's trying to load, it's we have a nice UI to look at. Like that's one thing I love about Okay.
There you go.
Right. There we go. Something that's working. Okay, so you can do a get. Okay. And this is all wired up today. You can do a post. So I can try it out and add a new item. almost dinner time. It's actually past dinner time where I'm at, so I'm gonna have like cooked dinner, and then I'm gonna execute this. Please don't break.
It's definitely like 5 o'clock is past my dinner time. I'm very much an
Yeah, like
early eater.
me too. By 6, I'm done. Um, if this fails, please don't. Yeah, it didn't. Did it?
Okay.
Yeah, there you see. Right, we've got it. So like people can start interacting with their application. Like the one thing that we're trying to figure out, and I'd love people's thoughts on this, is you can configure Swagger on your own, and we have support for it. Like if you look at this file, you can see that I actually configured my Swagger support on my own. But another thing that we've been thinking about, and I'd love to get people's thoughts on this, is having Swagger built in by default. So if someone builds an API and they launch the application and they do /docs or /swagger, it's already there for you without you having to configure anything on your side. So I'd love to have your thoughts on that. And with that being said, that's all I have to share.
Yeah, at least my opinion when it comes to Swagger is I would love to see that there by default.
Okay.
Just because like when I'm going in and I'm playing around with creating an endpoint, having something that I can just real quick test is fantastic. Not having to fire up Postman, and there is actually, at least for VS Code, there's a great extension where you can actually just create an HTTP file and then just define put the URL up top and then just define
Yeah.
what the JSON body is that you want to send up, and then it will do it. It's fantastic. It's wonderful.
What magical tool is that?
Oh gosh. What magical Anthony Chu turned me on to it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It is. Nope, that's not it. Where is it? Yeah, it's called REST Client.
Oh, I've heard about this one. Yes, I saw it like in the Twitter space for a while. Like everyone was tweeting about it at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But anyway, like having that GUI to do that would be fantastic. The only thing that I would say is either maybe like by default having a flag that when it's production to disable it.
Yes.
And then having, making that the default so that somebody could turn that on if they want to. But I think having that there by default would be fantastic. So yeah. And then Den asks a question: is Swagger your overall preferred UI, and do you have any resources you can recommend for its use?
Oh yeah. So Swagger is the only one I have had exposure to, right? That's 100% the fact. And Swagger does have some really good documentation on their website on how to get started. And I don't see a link, but I'll tweet it out. Like one of the things I try to do after every stream is put together a gist with everything I've talked about. So people are just like, what is she talking about? Like I'll actually put together a gist and tweet it out. Because of coming from the notebook space quite a bit, one of the ways I've tested APIs in the past is that .NET Interactive actually has an ASP.NET extension where it actually gives you a UI to test APIs. So but it's such a niche thing to do, but it's not like the only way I do it. So that's like, I just wanted to be honest, is that Swagger is like the only way that I've been exposed to test APIs.
Okay, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. I appreciate that. Cool. So if somebody wants to get playing around with all of this and get started, where are some good resources? Where can they go?
Okay, so the best resource right now, I'll have a much better blog post next week because I'm writing a tutorial, but the best resource right now is if you look up minimal APIs .NET 6, ASP.NET 6, we have a getting started mini tutorial on the blog, on the ASP.NET blog, and other places on how to get started is like there. We haven't been good at writing docs. Everything changes so often. But next week, I am committed, and no, actually, I am on basically online to finish off the tutorial where we will talk about validation, authorization, deployment, setting up Swagger, building your own CRUD app. We'll have that ready for you. So next week, we'll have that ready. But if you wanted to get started today, just the .NET New Web Empty template is how you get started with minimal APIs.
Interesting. Okay, so it's right there, and away you can go from there. Assuming, of course, that you did install the preview, and we did actually share that out on both
Yeah.
YouTube and over on Learn TV. Fantastic. And people can find you over at Lady Naggaga
Yep.
on Twitter, and that's fantastic. Cool. Thank you so much for coming on. I greatly appreciate this. This was wonderful. It was great just to chat. If
Yeah, it was great
nothing else.
chatting with you
So
too. And
yeah.
and I hope to be back, and we'll have like a more solid minimal API experience. And I'd love to hear people's feedback on where we're going with this.
Yeah, we'll definitely find space in the calendar to bring you back and go in and look at all of this. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. This is a Web Wednesday. I cannot remember what's next week. I'm so terrible with my memory. But anyway, we'll be back again next week. We'll have another fantastic guest. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you again to Maria, and everybody.
Thank
Enjoy the
you
rest
so
of your
much.
Wednesday or your Thursday.
Bye. Thanks for
Bye.
having me, Christopher.
Thank
Bye.
you.